Matt Walsh and Nick Carter are partners at Castle Island Ventures. All views expressed by them or the guests on this podcast are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Castle Island Ventures. Guests and hosts may maintain positions in the assets discussed in this podcast. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone on this podcast as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their personal opinion. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Brought down by bad mortgage investments, Lehman, which has 25,000 employees, will be liquidated.
The federal government loans American International Group, AIG, $85 billion.
This is a different kind of market, and the Fed is asleep.
The federal government is stepping in to stabilize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two mortgage giants that have been threatened by the housing crisis.
The Bank of England has pumped £75 billion more into Britain's ailing economy with a new round of quantitative easing.
You print a couple $1 trillion, and all of a sudden, people start to worry. So out of this worry, we have something called the Bitcoin.
Welcome to On the Brink. I'm Matt Walsh.
And I'm Nick Carter.
And this episode is brought to you by Withum. So if you listen to this show, you know that we take tax accounting and auditing very seriously. And when it comes to digital assets, building trust and relationships with your counterparties like custodians, brokerages, and even the regulators is critically important. And that's where Withum comes in. They're a top 25 accounting, tax, and advisory firm, and they have a team of professionals that is 100% dedicated to the digital asset and blockchain technology industry. They help out some of the highest profile companies in our industry with things like tax advisory, accounting for token sales, stablecoin audits, financial statement audits, and much, much more. They're not just enthusiasts. These guys are crypto enthusiasts, and they are the top accounting firm for their digital asset practice. Withum is passionate about helping you. They're passionate about the space. So head over to withum.com/crypto to learn more.
Well, we might be setting the record for the latest we've ever recorded this podcast.
It is late. This is a grind, man. This is,
I don't know how you stayed up so late.
Yeah. Well, I just don't sleep. But you're coming off of, what is this, a 3-day Monad event here?
The Monad people, love them as I do, have asked a lot of me this time.
Well, it's great. They're putting you in front of a lot of startups just 3 days in a row, huh?
So I'm judging the Monad pitch competition, Monad Madness, and there were 20 pitches today. 20.
Love it.
You know how much of an attention span you need to sit through? They were good pitches. They're very high quality.
Yeah, so what's your view on the Monad ecosystem right now?
I think the state of the Monad ecosystem is very strong. So tomorrow is the next day. We advanced 8 finalists, so stay tuned on that. It's very exciting companies in there, the Monad Madness. But it's been a long day. I spoke at Columbia this morning as well. That's my kind of semi-annual pilgrimage to Columbia. Oh,
great program they have up there at Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, tent. What did they have on Columbia? They had a tent city or like some kind of protest. Gaza protest. No. I didn't see anything. But anyway, that notwithstanding, there's some great academics at Columbia for sure. And so I spoke in Omid's crypto. It's an MBA program. I spoke to the crypto people about Bitcoin. Last year, it caused a whole scandal. Do you remember that?
I do. What did you have on that slide? It was like the future of the fee market on Bitcoin. It was quite a stir.
Yeah, I was talking about potential solutions to the security budget on Bitcoin caused like huge problems.
Yeah, people didn't want to hear your thoughts on that.
They thought I was corrupting the minds of the impressionable youths. And so, of course, I talked about the same thing again this year. So,
what are the hot topics? What are people asking in the Q&A?
They asked about crypto VC. A lot of them want to be venture capitalists. I didn't have the heart to tell them, what it's like. It involves recording podcasts at 10:30 in the evening.
Yeah, you got to grind. I mean, you can't be a crypto VC if you don't have a podcast, right?
I mean, we've done this podcast for how long? 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
I can't believe that, first of all. And then we've missed 1 week ever. Is that it?
We've missed 1 week ever, but we actually recorded that week. We just forgot to upload it.
We didn't upload it. This is the lost tape. So, I'm amazed. I'm impressed at what we've done here. I don't know how the heck we did that.
Well, the fact of the matter is you'd have to find 2 people that just don't take vacations. And I guess that's kind of what the situation is.
We don't. We religiously do not take vacations.
Luckily, we haven't enforced that as a corporate policy.
Yeah, now that we've grown as a firm, we have to honor federal holidays. I've never even heard of half of these holidays.
Yeah, there's
I
new
swear they
ones
just make
popping
them
up left and right. Yeah.
But so we adhere to those. We follow the law at this firm, to be clear. We do follow the law.
We do.
So,
well, speaking of Monad, we had a Monad-focused podcast this week with Steven from Kinsu. Probably first of many. I really enjoy this Monad ecosystem that's developing here.
We had a busy week of content. I just published something in CoinDesk about Silvergate, unsurprisingly.
Yeah. That was good.
That's
a little
kind
bit
of
of
like
a rehash.
Much shorter version of the very long article I published last week. So read that if you...
And it looks like...
I only have 10 minutes.
Looks like your token addresses, token 2049 keynote is finally out there as well. So we'll put that in our newsletter.
Yeah, that was, here's the trick to being relaxed during a keynote speech. Do you want to know the trick?
Yes.
The trick is to learn how to fight, first of all, and then do that, go into the ring, fight. And then after that, nothing is scary anymore.
Yeah, so no butterflies whatsoever.
No, I was so relaxed because it's like I remembered how bad it was, how scared I was when I walked into the ring. And I'm like, well, this isn't remotely as bad. All I have to do is stand up and give a speech.
Yeah, I could see that working. But you've never really been nervous giving speeches before.
I was nervous. I was always nervous.
Really?
But I feel like I did a good job, but I was always super nervous. Now, on a go-forward basis, no butterflies. Isn't that crazy? It fixed me.
That's good. It's good.
Yeah. So it's advice which works, but I don't know if anybody's going to want to follow that.
Yeah, that's tough to follow. You could also just join. What is the club that is in like every city?
Toastmasters.
You could join the Toastmasters. Maybe.
Yeah, there's probably like other ways to get over your fear of public speaking that are just involve less physical pain.
Take MBA courses on public speaking. There's other stuff you can do besides karate combat.
Yes, those simpler ways. Not a lot of deals this week. Plenty of news though.
Yeah, a couple deals here. Matrixport, the crypto financial services platform, they acquired Crypto Finance AG, which is a Swiss asset manager.
Then we have RD Technologies, a Web3 financial infrastructure provider. There is $8 million from Hongshan, Hivemind, and Aptos Labs.
Then it's MeshMap. This is a decentralized protocol for mapping. I kind of like this idea. We've seen a bunch of these over the years. They raised $4 million from A16Z Crypto, Coliseum, Lattice, in EV3. That's the Escape Velocity team. The mapping thing is very intriguing to me.
Are you a believer in the decentralized mapping?
It kind of depends on the model. I mean, historically speaking, I think the role of the token has been what has kind of limited the adoption here for a bunch of these platforms, because the token itself has security-like properties in some of the designs I've seen.
Well, we'll keep you updated on MeshMap. Next one up we have is Mind Network. They're an encryption-focused blockchain. They raised $10 million from Animoca Brands, ArcStream Capital, and Cogitant Ventures.
And the last one is Second Live. This is a social metaverse platform that raised $12 million from Crypto.com, Spark Digital Capital, Cypher Capital, and others. So not a crazy busy deal week this week, but a lot of news.
No. And before we jump into the news, let's do the Metrics Minute, brought to you by Coin Metrics. Today we're looking at a quarterly update on crypto markets. As of Q3, Bitcoin has risen 54% year to date, while ETH is only up 15%. The best two performing assets in Q3 were SUI and Aave, among assets with a market cap greater than 1 billion. Bitcoin saw bouts of volatility this quarter, with realized volatility briefly exceeding 200% in August, the highest since FTX's collapse in November 22. Bitcoin's 2% order book depth expanded to 150 million, up from 50 to 100 million earlier this year. With a slight uptick in total network activity, fees on Ethereum rose from a low of 370 ETH in August to 2,500 ETH daily, trending towards deflation. Since the custodial transition of WBTC from BitGo, 350 million in WBTC remains locked in Maker, now known as the Sky ecosystem. while Aave recorded an all-time high of 2.2 billion in WBTC supplied as users migrate assets. That's your metrics minute.
All right, pretty good metrics minute there. So a lot of news. I mean, Bitcoin is trading like there's going to be a war in the Middle East, I would say.
Well, I think there is a war in the Middle East.
I guess, yeah.
Honest with you.
Not a declared one, but I suppose you're right. So Bitcoin sold off this week on a lot of unrest, I would say. We also have a port strike, which is now over. I don't know if you saw that while you were at dinner.
So you were worried about the port. I wasn't worried, for the record. And then the guy in charge of this thing ended up being some kind of gangster guy. So, like, we're not that sympathetic, I guess, to the longshoremen anymore.
Well, they got, like, what was the settle? They got a 60+% pay increase. So I guess that guy did his job. But I wouldn't want to mess with that guy. They got the concession.
What they asked for.
No, they didn't get the. I think they asked for 70-something, but they got 60-something. The original.
But the
offer
guy
was in the 50s.
who's in charge is like the most unsympathetic labor leader of all time. Like he's wearing like a big old Rolex, and he has a Bentley and lives in a gigantic mansion. He's just not like your typical like working class guy.
Yeah, but if you were a longshoreman, that's probably the guy you'd want representing you.
Well, you want the mafioso. Like you want a guy that's like really good at cutting deals, I guess.
I guess so. Well, they got a great deal. But
yeah,
now I have a CVS pharmacy full of Pampers and wipes at my house right now. So I'm pretty stocked.
So the longshoreman crisis didn't come to pass. I mean, are we more or less sympathetic to the longshoremen post this crisis?
Well, I mean, it sort of highlights the fact that this is a pretty fragile system when you really go deep. And you'd have to think that some of these people that own these ports might be thinking about automation at some point in the future.
I know. I feel like this whole thing backfired.
Yeah. I mean,
like I don't want to be held hostage
Let's go build a bunch of automation stuff here because this can't really be happening.
So first big piece of news, CZ, Mr. CZ has been released from prison on Friday. He served 4 months. That sentence followed a guilty plea of charges of failing to enforce anti-money laundering policies. He was fined $50 million, which I think he can afford, and Binance itself paid $4.3 billion, and he is a free man.
So he got off pretty good here, I would say, all things considered, just given everything that was going on and all of the ways this could have gone. I think he would take that deal any day.
Yeah, I mean, typically as an executive of a financial institution, you do not go to jail for BSA violations, so I still think he was hard done by.
That's fair.
Frankly.
Yeah, there's not a lot of bank executives that have ever gone to jail over BSA violations.
No, but he's out now. So will he return to crypto? We don't know. Time will tell.
I'd love to see his next chapter. I mean, he's going to be, top 50 richest people in the world right now. So it'll be really interesting to see where he decides to spend his time.
Next up in similar litigation news, not as happy, Roman Storm, the Tornado Cash co-founder, is set to face trial for alleged money laundering charges. A U.S. judge rejected his motion to dismiss. So it's kind of not trending well for Roman over at Tornado Cash.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now we're going to have a trial. It'll be really interesting to see the kind of the First Amendment points that get brought up at that trial around the relationship between code and free speech and whether or not the protocol development is basically just a free speech expression. I'd have to refresh myself on the way that Tornado Cash worked. I mean, there was some sort of a fee element with the token, so I don't know. He did make some money off it, as I recall, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think that the token's value in some way was related to the usage of the system. I think that's going to be a tough one, actually, for the crypto space.
Yeah. All right, another enforcement action here. Mango Labs and the Mango DAO, which I guess were the governing entities behind this Mango Markets, which was exploited by Avi Eisenberg. They have settled with the SEC for $700,000. They've agreed to destroy the remaining Mango tokens, which the SEC said was an unregistered securities offering. So it's about 2 years of turmoil here. They had, what was that hack? It was like $116 million. Any surprises in this one for you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the SEC kind of went scorched earth on them, but not that surprising at the end of the day. Kind of tough end for Mango.
So a lot of SEC related things this week. So Bitwise, which is of course one of our portfolio companies, asset management firm, they submitted an S1 earlier in the week for a Ripple ETF. And then a couple days later, I guess it was yesterday, the SEC filed an appeal to the XRP case. So they are protesting. They said they're not done fighting this, which how much money has been wasted on this case? It's just staggering. The U.S. government has spent so much money on this, but they're not done. So they're going to appeal this.
Not that surprising that the SEC appealed it. I mean, it was a kind of very surprising decision from, I guess, Judge Torres, was it? That the secondary sales of XRP were not securities, which other courts kind of disagreed with. So it looks like they're sort of digging in their heels on that one.
So they're digging in their heels, but earlier that day, Gurbir Grewal, the director of enforcement at the SEC, announced that he is stepping down in like 9 days. That to me was very surprising. Usually when there's someone stepping down that senior, there's a longer transition period. I wonder what happened there.
Yeah, he was kind of the star of the show over there. He'd presided over a lot of those SEC enforcements. It seems very abrupt, actually. I'm sure there's a story there that's not being told because it's a little bit surprising.
Now, do you think it has anything to do with the House Financial Services hearing last week when all 5 commissioners were up there and Emmer berated Gensler for not having any senior leaders take the fall for debt box?
I guess we don't know, but very swift change of leadership over there. I thought this was interesting news. Swift, of course, I don't even know how to describe Swift, the messaging layer really for global payments. They announced that banks using their networks will be able to trial digital asset transactions in 2025. Do you think that this is going to involve the public blockchain, or is this just going to be kind of one of those private blockchain pilots?
I mean, this could definitely be a private blockchain, but I don't really get this because Swift is just the messaging layer. So they don't actually send the assets themselves. They send instructions on how to move the assets. So, if you're a bank and you're using this for digital asset transactions, wouldn't you have to have a way to hold digital assets in the first place? None of the U.S. banks are actually holding any, what asset are you actually moving here?
Yeah, U.S. banks are still basically prohibited from touching crypto meaningfully. Is this just going to be for offshore? There certainly are a lot of offshore banks that touch crypto, but onshore banks are basically not allowed to do anything with crypto. So,
I mean, could this be a proof of concept where you hit a couple buttons on the machine and, hey, we just moved a digital asset. It's a fork of Bitcoin and we just moved a Satoshi or something? I guess, but I would think that you'd actually have to have the infrastructure built out around custody for this to actually matter.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't. Why do you need Swift? Why do you need Swift for digital assets?
Well, I think there's a role for Swift to play because digital assets do settlement, but if you look at traditional payments, there's the messaging and the settlement. It could certainly help to have a messaging layer for crypto. I think that would actually augment the system a fair amount.
I think that's what Nota Bene is doing on the travel rule compliance side. I don't know. I think the role of Swift going forward, at least for digital asset transactions, is very questionable.
I'm interested. We'll see what they come up with here. We're going to keep monitoring this story.
Let's talk about stablecoin developments. Visa announced the Visa Tokenized Asset Platform, VTAP, which is a platform for institutions to issue and manage digital assets, including stablecoins. They also announced that the Spanish bank BBVA is going to launch their own stablecoin in 2025 using Visa's platform. So, talking about banks not doing anything in the U.S., here's a Spanish bank that is launching their own stablecoin.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Look at banks like SocGen or Standard Chartered or BBVA or Nomura all actively getting involved in public blockchains, whether stablecoins or tokenized securities or something else. US banks are just nowhere on this. Clearly, there's an appetite among the banks to use crypto. And we knew that Visa was interested. Of course, they worked with us on the stablecoin report. It just so clearly shows how much regulatory issues in this country have held back the banks, because there's such clear appetite for banks to touch crypto overseas.
Yeah, well, this is great. Obviously, Visa has a huge business internationally. This kind of puts them, would you say this puts them in kind of the Paxos competitive category at this point?
Yeah, I didn't realize Visa would get into the stablecoin issuance business, but why not? I mean, they've been very vocal on stablecoins for a long time, and it's a good line of work if it works. There's huge opportunities to monetize the float if you are a successful stablecoin issuer. So
yeah, I mean, I guess they have the network, and so they don't have to actually be the underlying sponsor of the stablecoin. But just use the Visa technology. The distribution there is incredible. You'd have to think that MasterCard and Amex would be thinking about this too. For
sure. Also on the asset management side, Franklin Templeton extended support for their tokenized money market fund FOB-XS to the Aptos blockchain. So their tokenized fund is the second largest on the market behind BlackRock's Biddle, is also available on Arbitrum, Stellar, Polygon, and Avalanche. So really interesting moves from Franklin Templeton, one of the most crypto native asset managers out there.
We were talking about this with another investment group this week, just around the adoption of stablecoins on Stellar, and that remains really high. Like, kind of surprising how popular Stellar is for stablecoins.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like a sleeper blockchain on the they don't make a lot of noise about it, but there is secretly a lot of stablecoin transactions on Stellar.
Why do you think that is? Just kind of a first mover type of thing?
Yeah, I think their go-to-market's been quite good on stablecoins. I think they had a very deliberate positioning towards the stablecoin space and have quietly amassed, reasonable market share there.
What do you think Jed McCaleb's up to?
Is he still involved in Stellar?
No, I don't think so. But so he did, he went from Bitcoin. He was an OG Bitcoin person. Then he invented Ripple, and then he left, and then he invented Stellar.
Was it Jed that built this big surveillance network in San Francisco, or was that was that like Chris Larson? There's like someone in the Ripple.
I think that was Chris Larson.
Yeah.
That's Chris. Chris Larson's been doing a lot of stuff.
He got a lot of negative headlines for building this big like private surveillance network in SF.
Yeah, that was Chris Larson.
Yeah.
Well, do you think this HBO documentary on what's it called? Revealing Satoshi? Do I have to get HBO again for this?
I mean, I'm curious. Do you think it's the lab leak hypothesis? That's my guess. It's the Bitcoin lab leak.
No, I think it's people online are saying it's Len Sassman.
Oh, but I feel like we already looked at Len and decided it wasn't him.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that these reporters who spent probably like 2 months of their lives looking at it came to the same conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the circumstantial stuff around Len makes sense. Like he died, right? Like he was immortalized in Bitcoin, and that's when someone put the ASCII Bernanke in the blockchain, I think, to memorialize him, right? In 2011.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's right.
And once he died, Satoshi stopped posting.
Yeah, so the timing lines up. There's also so he was living in, I think, like Belgium, and people think that Satoshi had some European qualities in terms of the syntax.
The time zone, or also certainly the way that he used British English half the time.
British English, it's obviously like the original timestamp was the London newspaper, right? So, and then some of the timestamps around saying this happened yesterday would only make sense if you're in Europe.
Yeah, I seem to remember the evidence against it being Len, and I'm going to have to look at this again, is Len himself publicly said he didn't like Bitcoin a few times, but that could have been misdirection for sure.
Totally. And he worked with Hal Finney. He worked with a bunch of these guys. He was like roommates with Bram Cohen, who was also really early on the mailing list.
I think he had the chops.
Oh, for sure he had the chops. Yeah, for sure.
And if you're going to dock Satoshi, it's probably best that it's someone that is deceased, because, I mean, it's probably not good to dock Satoshi one way or the other. It's probably bad for their family. You know, that happened to Hal Finney, of course. But it's probably for the best if it is someone that's dead, because they're not going to get extorted.
Well, they're not going to get extorted. But there was that blog post I forget who wrote it. It was a few years ago, talking about this theory that it was Len Sassman. And then people started reaching out to his family. And I think there was like a reply from the family that the laptop was encrypted, so we can't even get access to it. But someone's like, you'd worry about personal safety, someone trying to go get that laptop.
Yeah, without a doubt. Anybody that's connected to him, it's just not going to be a good time. If the documentary says it's him, for sure.
But from the perspective of Bitcoin, the asset, I mean, it's good that it's not someone that's alive, I suppose.
Yeah, because like you kind of just like don't want Satoshi to come back and sell the coins or disavow Bitcoin, you know, selfishly. It's kind of best that Satoshi stays in the past.
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see.
We don't know what Satoshi's views on, you know, all of the hot button political issues are, and I think it's probably best.
Exactly. Like I don't know if we want to find out what Satoshi thought about contemporary political issues.
Right.
You know.
Or anything for that matter. It's like,
yeah.
Do you want to find out that Satoshi's like a Yankees fan? Like, I don't want to find that out.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to know mundane details about the life of Satoshi. Satoshi should be a mythical figure for the sake of the Bitcoin mystique.
But it's so it looks like they have Adam back in this documentary.
Well, do you know when it comes out?
Yeah, it's next week.
Oh wow. Okay. I mean, look, the last time the MSM thought they had Satoshi, Newsweek kind of got that one wrong.
Dorian Nakamoto.
Back in 2014. Was that 2014? Yeah, Dorian Nakamoto.
Poor guy.
They got that horrendously wrong.
Yeah, that guy really, that was a tough break for that guy.
You don't hear about new Satoshis every day. So I'm curious what they found.
So I'd be shocked if they proposed the lab leak theory, which I think has somewhere north of a 30% chance of being the true story.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar, the lab leak theory, which is like total supposition, it's not really based on any fact pattern or anything, is the idea that the US government invented Bitcoin as a secret project, and then the government didn't authorize the dissemination of Bitcoin, the protocol, but some technician or cryptographer working at the NSA was like, oh, this thing's too good to keep on the shelf. Let me just release it into the wild. I think that'd be great for Bitcoin, actually.
So I have a derivation on the lab leak theory. I don't know if we might have talked about this, but
tell me.
I think that has a decent chance of being true. I don't think it's north of 50%, but I think that has a decent chance of being true. But I don't think that it was necessarily a rogue employee that just did it on their own. I think if that were to be true, then someone in the U.S. government still has the keys and just waiting for Bitcoin to hit mass scale so that the U.S. can actually recalibrate its monetary system from a position of strength.
So that would actually be, it kind of depends on who is in charge when the Bitcoin, let's say that the government does have the Bitcoins. It depends who's in charge, right? So like if it's Trump, he did say he would create the reserve.
I don't think that this is like a presidential thing. I think this is like some rogue CIA person that thinks that they have the best interest of the country at heart.
If the U.S. government invented Bitcoin and then held on to 10% of the Bitcoin, 2 million Bitcoins for 15 years as it monetized and became this $1 trillion asset, that would just be one of the wildest stories of all time.
Oh, it'd be better than the Louisiana Purchase in terms of a chess move.
Right. And I think we did the math a while back, like the amount of Bitcoin that the U.S. government would have to match the amount of gold that they have, relatively speaking. I think the U.S. has like 3.8% of all the above ground gold. So if they did it this way, they'd end up with more Bitcoin proportionally than they have gold. It would be an incredibly powerful maneuver if they were able to pull it off.
Yeah. I mean, we're in late night rambling territory now here, but do you remember the Winklevoss twins? One of them wrote this Reddit post that was expunged, talking about mining gold on asteroids. And
when they were pitching Dave Portnoy on Bitcoin, that was what they opened with.
They actually brought it up then, yeah.
It wasn't like the last thing it was the first thing they mentioned. Dave Portnoy was like, what is going, like he was like so confused by this, but their whole thesis was we're gonna lasso a bunch of asteroids and mine the gold from them, and it's gonna devalue the gold, and so we're gonna need Bitcoin at that point.
Yeah, we're gonna send Bruce Willis and the whole gang from Armageddon. Ben Affleck's gonna go up there, just gonna start drilling for gold on asteroids.
The crazy thing is I kind of believe it. Like, we probably will have the technology to nudge an asteroid in our direction at one point, and it will provide us with trillions of dollars of gold. Like, I do believe that.
Well, so my reason for bringing it up is if we're giving a lot of credit to the U.S. government on this Bitcoin theory here, but if they're really that good, can we just get up on one of those asteroids and just start getting some gold out of them? Like, what's taking so long with that?
I think it's technically quite complex to marshal an asteroid and coax it into dropping its gold reserves on us specifically.
I mean, I'm not saying you send like the Boeing plane up there, but can we send like a SpaceX plane up there? And
like maybe Elon could do it.
Yeah, I think Elon.
The public sector can do it.
Let's maybe put Mars on hold for a couple of years and just go mine a few asteroids.
Because if you do that, it solves the debt problem overnight.
It really does. Like, people are talking about this debt thing like it's something we can actually fix. It's like, all right, we're going to devalue the currency, or we're going to go find a bunch of gold in Greenland and take over Greenland. I mean, there's pretty limited options here.
Yeah, there's another way. Is we find a space rock. Right. We somehow gravitationally persuade it to make its way in our direction. And then we're debt free.
I mean, how is that not a winning political stance? We have a VP debate this week. First of all, we don't even talk about the budget deficit at all in that debate, the national debt. That didn't come up once. Like, we're talking about a lot of things that are a lot less important. But if you were to run for president on let's go up and get some space rocks and see if there's gold in them, how does that not win?
There have been presidential runs focused on monetary policy. William Jennings Bryan, for instance.
Yeah. Didn't really pan out.
He lost. So there could be a campaign predicated on primarily focus on the gold mining asteroids.
Okay. It's not too late.
I don't know if it's you or me, but maybe someone listening is thinking of adding that to their platform.
I'd like to incept that into someone else's platform.
Yeah. Get the gold. Everybody else's gold is worthless. We have all the gold at that point, probably. We're debt free. They're in some kind of debt crisis. It kind of works.
I like that. I think we know some people that could pick this up.
Yeah, this is an underrated policy position.
Oh, that was talking mining gold asteroids in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think it's 20 to 30% that it's the lab leak. And then I don't think there's anyone that they've never fingered a Satoshi that, like, probably all the people that could be Satoshi, at some point, someone has claimed is Satoshi. I don't think there's any new names that are floating around. I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, so Tim Berners-Lee's name has been out there. Hal Finney, obviously, Bram Cohen, Nick Szabo,
people have
Adam
said
Back.
Nick Szabo, Len. That's kind of the short list. Like, there's not a lot of other names.
No. So it's going to be Len. So I just saved you the $9.99 for HBO.
But we're not allowed to speculate, apparently. It's like rude or it's like bad taste to speculate about Satoshi. So
no, this is all on Twitter today. Everyone thinks it's going to be Len.
I actually hadn't seen that at all, but I'm on the edge of my seat.
What are you drinking there? Is that a Red Bull?
Yeah, I would never consume an alcoholic beverage whilst recording this show. That would be totally inappropriate. So
good to know. Good to know. All right. Well, I think that's it for the week. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. Everybody have a safe and healthy weekend.